The wealthy millionaire thought he had everything: power, status, and riches that could buy the world at his feet. But when tragedy struck and his little girl lost her mother, he made a shocking decision. He would let his daughter choose a new one. On the chosen day, 5 elegant, wealthy women stood in a lavish room, sparkling in diamonds and silk, each desperate to be crowned the new mother. Guests whispered, expecting the girl to pick one of them. But then, something unbelievable happened. With innocent eyes and a quiet determination, she turned away from the wealth, ignored the glittering gowns, and pointed to the one woman nobody expected, the black housekeeper who had always stood quietly in the shadows. In the heart of a sprawling mansion, surrounded by marble floors, golden chandeliers, and walls lined with priceless art, lived a man who seemed untouchable. He was a millionaire many times over, respected in business circles, envied by rivals, and feared by those who knew his ruthless ambition. Yet behind the polished gates and luxurious lifestyle, tragedy had carved a deep wound. His beloved wife, the only person who ever softened his hardened heart, was gone, leaving behind an emptiness that no wealth could ever replace. At the center of it all was his young daughter. Barely 10 years old, she carried the quiet grief of losing her mother, but also a sharp awareness far beyond her years. She watched how women fluttered around her father, drawn not by love, but by the glimmer of fortune. He, blinded by pride and desperation, believed he could fill the void in his daughter's life with a simple solution: let her choose a new mother. So the stage was set. Invitations went out to 5 of the wealthiest, most glamorous women in the city. They arrived in shimmering gowns, jewels glittering under the chandelier lights, each determined to outshine the other. To them, this wasn't about love. It was about status, wealth, and the chance to step into a life of power. But in the shadows, away from the spotlight, stood someone else. A quiet figure in a simple uniform. The black housekeeper. She had no jewels, no fortune, no gowns, only kindness, only truth. The grand room was filled with whispers as the 5 wealthy women took their places. Each of them radiated confidence, their eyes gleaming with the certainty that money, beauty, and influence would secure their victory. One carried a designer handbag worth more than most people's yearly salary. Another dripped in diamonds, flaunting her fortune like armor. They were not just competing for a title. They were competing for power over the millionaire's household, and all of them believed they had already won. The millionaire stood proudly, announcing to the room that his daughter would choose her new mother. To him, it was a show of generosity, even brilliance. He believed he was giving her freedom when in reality he was parading his wealth like a stage performance. The cameras clicked, the guests leaned forward, and the little girl looked small under the weight of so many stares. As each woman stepped forward, they showered her with false affection. One bent low, offering her expensive perfume to smell. Another dangled diamond bracelets, telling her how special she would be if she chose her. They spoke sweetly, but beneath their smiles lay arrogance, the certainty that a child, especially one so young, would never look beyond the glitter. And yet, the girl's eyes didn't light up. She stayed silent, her gaze drifting across the room, searching for something none of them carried. While the crowd admired the wealthy candidates, the black housekeeper quietly stood against the far wall. Her uniform was plain, her hands slightly worn from years of labor. She didn't approach. The girl didn't attempt to compete. Instead, she simply watched with quiet concern, her posture humble, her presence almost invisible. But the girl noticed, because while the others had only appeared when opportunity called, the housekeeper had always been there. She was the one who comforted her during sleepless nights, who wiped her tears when no one else cared, who whispered kind words when grief threatened to crush her spirit. To the world, she was just an employee. To the child, she was safety. She was love. Still, the millionaire couldn't see it. In his eyes, the housekeeper was a servant, someone meant to stay in the background. He wanted his daughter to be dazzled, to choose someone who could match the prestige of his name. Guests whispered in agreement. Surely, they thought, no little girl would ever turn away from such luxury. Surely she would choose one of the glamorous women. But in that silence, a different tension was rising. The child's hesitation was clear, and the wealthy women began to frown. Some exchanged smug glances, convinced she was simply overwhelmed. Others grew impatient, believing it was only a matter of time before she reached for their jeweled hands. What none of them realized was that the girl was building the courage to do something no one expected, something that would shatter the illusion of wealth and status her father had so carefully constructed. She was about to turn her back on everything they represented. The air inside the mansion grew heavy, almost suffocating, as every eye locked on the little girl. The millionaire cleared his throat, urging her to decide, convinced she would reach for one of the jeweled hands waiting to claim her. The women leaned forward, their smiles stretching thin, desperate to seal their victory. But the child didn't move toward them. Instead, she turned her head, slowly, deliberately, toward the back of the room. Gasps rippled through the crowd as her small hand lifted and pointed, not at diamonds, not at silk gowns, but at the black housekeeper standing quietly in her plain uniform. For a heartbeat, silence consumed the room. The millionaire's confident smile froze, his pride cracking into disbelief. The wealthy women's painted faces fell, their arrogance replaced with shock, even anger. How could she choose her? A servant? Someone with no riches, no status, no name worthy of their world? But the girl's voice, soft yet steady, broke through the silence. She explained that when her mother died, it was not these glamorous women who held her hand at night. It was not wealth that wiped her tears or whispered comfort into her ears. It was the housekeeper, the one who loved her without asking for anything in return. The one who saw her not as a millionaire's daughter, but as a little girl who needed a mother's warmth. The words hit the room like thunder. The women shifted uncomfortably, the guests whispered furiously, and the millionaire's face flushed with shock and shame. For the first time he realized that all his riches, his pride, his parade of wealth, none of it could replace the quiet strength of love. And in that single choice, his daughter shattered the illusion of everything he thought mattered. The silence lingered in the mansion long after the little girl made her choice. For the first time, the glitter of chandeliers and the shimmer of diamonds seemed dull, insignificant compared to the truth shining through her words. Guests avoided each other's gaze, ashamed at how easily they had celebrated wealth over love. The 5 rich women who had strutted in with pride and confidence now stood humiliated, their jewels suddenly heavy, their gowns suddenly meaningless. The millionaire, a man who had built his life on power and prestige, stood frozen. He had always believed money could solve anything, that influence could bend the world to his will. But his daughter's innocent choice revealed a truth his wealth could never buy. It was love, unconditional, genuine, selfless, that mattered. Saw the black housekeeper, stunned and trembling, never sought such recognition. To her, caring for the girl had not been a role or a duty. It had been love, natural and unspoken. She stepped forward hesitantly, tears in her eyes, as the child ran into her arms. The embrace was pure, unshakable, and real. In that moment, no one in the room could deny who the true mother already was. For the millionaire, the lesson cut deep. He saw how blind he had been, mistaking wealth for worth, appearances for truth. The housekeeper, whom he had overlooked for years, had quietly held more strength, more grace, and more love than all the women in silk gowns combined. And though his pride resisted, his heart finally softened. As the guests left in stunned silence, the image remained. A child choosing love over wealth, truth over appearances, humanity over status. It was a choice that shattered prejudices, broke through arrogance, and exposed society's deepest flaw, the belief that value comes from riches, when in reality it comes from the heart. This story isn't just about a millionaire or his daughter, it's about us. How often do we ignore those who serve quietly in the shadows, whose kindness goes unseen simply because society labels them less? How often do we measure worth in jewels and titles, forgetting that true greatness lies in compassion, loyalty, and love? The little girl's choice reminds us all. Money fades, status crumbles, but love endures. Perhaps the real question is, when the time comes for us to choose, will we recognize what truly matters? Or will we be blinded by the glitter that was never real in the first place?